Hello, today's activity is a pre-study activity and it's called Think It Out. Now, this activity could well change the way that you revise things. So, what is a pre-study activity? Well, it's an activity that you're going to do before you spend some time learning something. So, that could be before a lesson, it could be before researching something, doing revision. Okay, so what you're going to do with a pre-study activity is you're going to get the big picture. And so whenever you're learning the details, you then can see how it fits into the big picture. I have already made a pre-study activity called the Little Big Picture. And that's probably an introduction to pre-study. And if you want to have a look at that, you can click on this here. So the Think It Out pre-study activity is particularly good because it is a making connections activity. So it really forces you to come up with those connections by yourself. In actual fact, not many people know about this activity or how good it is. So it can really give you the advantage if you get good at this one. Now, one of the important parts of it is that we all know that we have to learn things and it is important to learn things. But even so, that doesn't mean that you're going to be particularly interested in that topic. You're going to really want to. And this activity is really good at getting you interested in learning things about that topic. It's also really good because within about 20-25 minutes, you can go from being really confused and not understanding much about the topic at all to being really quite confident about the key parts to it. There are several stages to this. And I'm going to briefly talk through those first of all, and then I'll show you a specific example. So the first thing to do is get your information and just look at the headings. I don't want you to be going into the details, reading page upon page, just looking at those headings, the titles, the main parts, and then you've got to reduce that down to only 3 or 5. And that's going to take a bit of thinking. The second thing to do is then try and make connections between those main parts. Why is this important? How does it affect the other thing? Are those two grouped together? Does that cause this? Those sorts of ideas. You try and come up with your own theory. And once you've come up with your theory, you want to be mapping that out. You want to be drawing it out. You want to be making it clear on paper what you think is happening and why. Once you've done that part, you can then check your predictions. So you're going to be thinking this is going to happen because of this, and if that happens, that happens. This is your first time to actually look through the information. You're just not looking at the information like you normally would. You're not going from one page to the next to the next. You're just skipping through, finding those things that you're now interested in, those important parts that you think are going to happen, and checking it's the way that you think it is. So it's much quicker. It might only take you 5 minutes to check your predictions. So I'm going to go into a specific details now. I'm not going to talk about the subject matter, but I'm going to talk about the process itself. So the first thing to do is get your information, look at the titles, the headings, and reduce those down to 3 to 5 important parts. Now, you then write out those important parts on a piece of paper so you can then really sit and think about them and really start thinking about how they link together, why one thing is connected to another. Once you've done that thinking, you've come up with a theory, you want to map that out. That map needs to make sense to you. This leads to that, which causes this, that sort of thing. In this example, I mapped it out in 2 different ways, but when I looked at both of the ways, they're actually very similar. So I then wrote down what I thought was my common predictions, what I thought were important, why they were important, and I made those explicit. I wrote those down. And from that, I could then come up with some questions. Is this going to happen? Is that because of this? Does that cause that? Those sorts of things. So I've now got specific questions to look for. And when I'm reading, I'm just skimming, quickly looking for that information. I'm not going page by page. I'm not reading the details. I'm just zooming in to those bits that I'm now interested in. Once I've done that, I can then update my model. I can then go back and I make the changes because I'm not going to be right about everything. There's things I'm going to be wrong about. There's things I ain't going to be right about. But either way, my model is going to be updating. I'm going to have a better, more focused, correct idea about what's going on. And as I can see here, what you'll probably find, I've seen some gaps. there's an area there that I really need to focus on that I hadn't identified before. And so that's going to be my next bit of learning. I'm going to focus in on those gaps. So like I said at the start, not many people are doing it. And if you end up doing this well, you will see that it is really, really beneficial, and you're going to keep on using this sort of activity. Well, what happened to me was I picked this topic so I could use it to make the video to explain to you. I wasn't particularly interested in the topic. It didn't really interest me reading one page to the next page to the next page of all the facts and details. But doing this activity, by sitting and thinking and coming up with my own theory and predictions and what I thought was going to happen, it made me much more interested in just skimming through and double checking that, finding out what I got right, finding out what I got wrong. And now I'm much more interested in the whole topic. I've understood a lot of the important parts, but there's more important parts that I don't know I'm missing. So again, I'm motivated to learn more about this topic. And like I said right from the start, it only took 25 minutes or so for me to go from somebody who really doesn't know anything about this. I've got quite a detailed knowledge about some of those important parts to this topic now. So I'm already much more confident than what I was half an hour before doing this topic. Another good thing, which I didn't really talk about before, is that this is a really good making connections activity. It's you sitting down and really thinking hard. And when you're thinking hard, you're doing that active learning. When you're trying to make those connections, you're strengthening all that knowledge rather than learning things as isolated facts. You're actually connecting everything together and building a good framework to understand this whole topic, so that when any new information comes in, you can then connect that into your framework, assess it. Does that fit? Doesn't that fit? Where does that go? Okay, it makes the whole thing more relevant. And when you've got all this information connected together, that means you've got a much stronger understanding. There's much less chance that you're going to forget information because it's all connected and reinforcing each other. So it's now your turn to have a go at the Think It Out pre-study activity. What I'll do is I'll leave these instructions up so you can have a look and have a go yourself. This is a really good activity to get used to. I hope you manage to spend some time and really work this one out. What I'll do in the future is I'll make another Think It Out pre-study video on a different subject so that you can see that it works for different subjects, not just for something like history. Thank you for listening, and good luck with your work today.